Tammi.
Yes, I just
Hello.
played footsies with you.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's a nice start to the
Sorry.
podcast. How you doing, Tam?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Yeah, I've had a really good day. I guess we'll dive into things soon, but a lot of my work recently has been moving off the coaching floor and doing a lot more stuff behind a computer, which is fun but challenging at the same time. But today was a huge day of like actually having meetings and connecting with people, and I've loved it.
What do you find challenging about being behind a computer? Because I think we talk about this all the time, right? There's
Yeah.
a lot of people have this idea that the evolution of a coach means that one day we're going to be sat behind a computer, writing programs,
Yep.
traveling the world, doing
Yep.
things that we love. But what is the reality of now being someone who's moved off the training floor a bit more,
Yeah.
off the coaching floor, sorry, and is spending a bit more time behind a computer? What are the challenges of that?
I think personally for me, probably some of the challenges that arise are that I'm already quite an insular, introverted human by nature. So I already spend a lot of time by myself, and it just kind of enforces that habit more. And it's the reality is that nothing for me has beaten human connection, actually being with people. And I think something that's hard for me is that because I am helping to develop new projects and I like to do well at what I'm doing. So I put a lot of time and effort into it. The time and effort that I'm putting into growing something online is taking away from my time to connect and build what's right in front of me. So that is normally the challenge. So what you said couldn't have like hit home more true, where it was like, that is exactly what I thought my career would be. I thought I wanted to be this nomadic spirit that would travel and be here, there, and everywhere and just have this online life. But having this taste of what the reality actually is, I don't think I want that. So, yeah, for me, it's not something that I particularly love to do by itself. There are elements that I love for sure, but I don't think that I could move to that yet, is what
Yeah,
I would say.
I would totally agree with you.
Mm.
It's funny because at one point in time, I thought I was going to move almost entirely away from personal training.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can still coach people online. I'm going to write all the programming for the group stuff,
Mm.
but I need to make sure I got enough time to run the gym and to grow the process programming and do the podcast.
Yeah.
But I now have four clients who are all one-on-one clients I've coached for over 10 years.
Mm.
And it's become like a non-negotiable thing that I just don't want to let go of them ever,
Yeah.
because it's now like those are like 4 hours within my week that are all about like a relationship that's been very well established, and I get this
Mhm.
I get this social connection opportunity that's different from any other social interaction I get. So, with the team, love it. With
Yeah.
my colleagues, love it. On the training floor, love it. With the CrossFitters that I coach, which are all athletes that I coach, which is a lot of people, love it. But there's just
Mm.
something about these guys who are general population. They
Mm.
don't have like crazy athletic endeavors. They're just regular people that I have a great relationship with, and I love that time with them.
Yeah.
And I don't want to change that time with them.
Oh, I completely resonate with that. That is like you've two things you've now said that I'm like, wow. Yeah, no, you couldn't be more right. I just think, yeah, human interaction is at the core of everything we do. We're like born to connect with people. And I think for me as well, something that I've found with personal training sessions or running group classes or even team training is like, I'm so present in that moment.
Mm.
And I find that I'm not always like that when I'm behind a laptop or on a computer or like getting through tasks. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about that's you said you've taken on more job responsibilities now
Yeah.
that are to do with like growing projects,
Mhm.
and that means that a lot more of your time is spent behind a computer.
Yes.
One of those big projects is HYROX.
Oh, HYROX, mate.
HYROX. So tell me a little bit about your responsibility, your job responsibility, and what you're doing within Coastal and the process programming to do with HYROX.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, over the years, you've done an incredible job of building this facility into an incredible strength and conditioning gym that focuses primarily on either personal training or, I guess, group classes that lean towards CrossFit. And now, at least within this region, and I think over the world, it's starting to expand really fast. But HYROX has presented something that is incredible for the community that we have here. HYROX for Hong Kong people is, it's a sport where they already love to run. They're a little bit intimidated by weights, and it's given them this opportunity to be like, oh, wait, like I can be in a gym and do something that I love and what I think that I would be good at. And yeah, I've just been given the opportunity to grow that branch of our umbrella. Now that we've kind of got the, I guess, handle set, we're now trying to like grow these little sporks and make it all work out. And this is one of the first ones that we're heading towards that's different from CrossFit, which is cool.
And so what are some of the things that you're working on?
Yeah, lots. Yeah, so at the moment we have a couple of things. If I was to speak true to what like brings me a lot of fulfillment and happiness is nutrition. Like I've always loved it. So part of this I was like, let me create like a nutrition guide for HYROX. It's kind of like one of the things we have on the side. But our ultimate thing that we're working on right now is our online program. And then in-house and at Coastal, we are running group classes now. So we started off with 2 a week, we're now at 3 a week. We're prepping people for particular events that we've kind of put on the map. Our affiliates are also getting on board the HYROX programming now. So we program in-house and then they follow our programming as well, which is super cool. And then the next step in all of this is to run athlete camps, just like we do for our CrossFit stuff.
And Tam, what about HYROX like gets you going? Because you've now raced in, you were the first one out of our whole team to ever even start talking about HYROX. You were coaching a client,
Yeah.
Jade.
Yeah, Jade Skillen.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, and this was like early days of HYROX. It wasn't a massive
Yeah.
thing, I think, at this point
We
in time.
didn't know what it was.
Didn't know what it was. And
Yeah.
you were competing. I remember we sat down to talk about kind of how you would program for
Yep.
the HYROX. And I was like, I don't even know what HYROX is. So I
Yeah,
had to
we
sit
used
down.
it as PD.
Yeah,
I
I
remember
had to
that.
sit down and like learn about what the race was.
Yep.
And then when it came to Asia, you took part in it, taking a part in it twice now as an individual.
Yeah, so I
Once the
did
team.
the year that I coached Jade, when we had gone out, we ended up doing it. She did it individual, and then we did it as a doubles for fun. And then that was kind of like my first taste. And then when it came to Hong Kong the first time, I did it as an individual. And then the next year I did it with Ant in a doubles. And then the last year that just passed, I went as a coach.
And what do you love about it? Like what was the thing that initially brought you to it, and why are you sticking with it?
No, that's a great question. Obviously the first thing that brought me to knowing the sport was Jade initially. I think as a coach, it's always really fun when you get clients from different sports or different walks in life or with different goals, because it challenges you as a coach to create a program where, okay, the method is slightly different, but the principles remain the same. So it was like, cool, this is fun. Like I can nerd out on this and I can get my team involved and I can learn about a different sport. And it's always fun to learn about different sports, because you find that if you are in a particular sport like CrossFit, it is such a niche. Like, yeah, okay, you like know everyone in the world of CrossFit because it's pretty small, but then you find out about dragon boating or you find out about jiu-jitsu, and there's like all these little communities in these pockets of people. And I think, yeah, I've always connected with people through sport because it's something that I share familiar ground with. The second thing, probably honestly, is like HYROX is probably compiled of all the movements I love. So I was
You're
like,
bloody good at HYROX.
I was like, I like CrossFit. I don't love running that much, but I can probably get good enough at running. I know that I'm pretty okay at the other functional elements. So like, I could probably do pretty good at this. Like, I'm just going to give it a whack. So I think the fact that it lent towards, number one, things that I liked. Number two, an opportunity to meet the greater community by broadening my horizons of entering a different sport. And then number three is because I probably don't compete as much anymore. I know that I've taken a lot of that drive into my work, and I just see so much potential for us as a company to do things where I know we do things differently. Not necessarily like we're the best, but like there are other people out there doing similar things. But I just think that bringing our knowledge and our expertise into this, I know that we can create something really great for people. And it's not just random programming or like, random simulations all the time, or not peaking people or getting them injured. It's like, no, we've actually really sat down, thought about how to make someone the best they can be for that day. And then it also brings everyone together. So like Taiwan, for example, which is coming up in a few weeks from now. This is going to be the first time where we're flying overseas with some of our gym members. Like we're going to go to a dinner together. We've got like processed t-shirts. We're meeting people from around the world that are flying in to do the event as well. Like that for me is why I love it, because I don't compete anymore. And now I still get to connect with more communities, more people, have the same experience, slightly different because there's no me on the dance floor kind of thing. But yeah, I'm loving watching people step into their spotlight. And I find so much fulfillment in watching others do well. Like that is when I feel like I feel like, you know what I mean? Like the fire has just got like fuel added to it when they're happy and they're like, oh my God, I managed to do this thing that I never thought that I could do. Or even if it's a bad result, being able to be there for that person and know that I've experienced what that is like. So I'm not just a coach that's like, yeah, well, like you'll be fine. It's like, I know exactly how you feel and I can word it and empathize and yeah, just be their support network. So there's a lot there that I just said, but yeah, it's just a cool opportunity.
Yeah, and then you were talking about, I think especially right now in Hong Kong and Asia, HYROX is like the thing
It is.
that a lot of people are talking about. There's a lot of interest in terms of general public participating in it, because that's what HYROX's whole goal was, right? It's a
Yep.
sport for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing that we all love about it, is that it's really low barriers to entry.
Mm-hmm.
You can participate in a HYROX event and you can do the relay, which means you're doing, 10 minutes, 20 minutes of work.
Mm.
Anyone can really grab three mates and do it. You've got the doubles, and then you've got the pro, and then you've got you've got so many divisions that obviously do get harder and more challenging, but really like it's a much more accepting than probably what we're used to, right? With CrossFit being super high barriers to entry. Generally speaking, people who compete in CrossFit competitions are very obsessive in nature. They commit a lot of time and energy to the thing.
Yeah.
Whereas you just get so much more variety, I think,
Absolutely.
in people when it comes to HYROX races.
Mm.
But you were talking about, what a lot of the industry, I think, are doing with HYROX, and which is normal. And I think when a fad or something that becomes very popular in the moment, everyone wants to jump in to be a part of it,
Yeah.
right? There's also races happening all over Asia right now.
Mm.
More and more people wanting and needing maybe guidance from like fitness professionals. You threw around a few terms there. You said constantly varied general programming. You said competition prep.
Mm.
You said peaking versus non-peaking. So I think those are some of the things I want to dig into now.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about how we started with HYROX as a gym.
Mm.
Basically, it was, I think, November 2022, 2023?
22,
Right,
maybe
2022?
even. Yeah, because
Yeah,
they
right.
did that one and then they did the March one and then they
We
did
still had
another
masks
November.
on, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, we said, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
I think as a whole coaching team, we're like, we're going to do HYROX. I think we put it out to our community, be like, hey guys, by the way, there's this HYROX thing's coming to Hong Kong. We're going to do it as a coaching team. Does anyone want to get involved? And I think we had like 50 people straight away.
So
we're like,
many.
that looks really cool.
Yeah.
We'd like to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we were just planning on just like putting out a program. Like we'll just put up a session once a week, do some accessory work to prep for it. And then I think we realized pretty quickly that everyone was like, well, can we just run like classes? Like, there's 50 of us, why don't we do something with this? And so we were like, okay, well, there's clearly enough demand for us to actually do something, to help like get this group together to start them doing it. And we all sat down as a team. We're like, okay, well, what does this actually need to look like? And I think this is basically where we did our first ever competition prep cycle.
Yeah.
So I think we had about 12 weeks. I think it might have been 8 weeks for the first one.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact time. I don't think it was 12, but I also don't think it was 8. I think it was like somewhere in between, maybe like 10 or 9 or something random.
Yeah, so I think we had something like 9 weeks, and then we sat down as a team. We're like, well, if we're gonna run classes, we have the date when we know we're going to be racing. Why don't we try and create some form of like progressive program that's going to prepare us for the race?
Yeah.
And that was how we first started with HYROX and coaching HYROX, right? It was basically, we started doing these preparation cycles for strict, like just Hong Kong to start off with.
Yeah.
And then that grew into the fact that more HYROX started popping up around Asia, that other people around Asia were like, okay, well, I have one in Singapore. How do I prep for this?
Yeah.
So we're like, well, you can't do it at the same time as we're doing ours because your race is at a completely different time.
Yeah.
We need to maybe start getting some online for these guys and preparing them for their races. But then recently we've done something new, which is we've now kind of entered the arena of like more of a generalized HYROX program, which is kind of running a bit more consistently throughout the year. So I want to talk about those two things. Like, where is the difference? And, what is the whole idea behind peaking and preparing someone for a race versus why can't someone just do, a general HYROX program all year round and then go race?
No, really good points and really good questions. I think that it really just is dependent on that person's goals. Like if someone was just like, I just want to go and have fun, don't really care how I go, I'm not willing to put in the training to be progressive, I don't mind, I'm not that consistent, and they were like, I'm in a relay, you'd be like, okay, well, like, what can you do? And maybe GPP, general programming stuff, is okay. Is it going to make them the best that they could be? No, but it'll be adequate.
And let's just define that real quick. When we say GPP, what do we mean by that? In the like the HYROX sense.
In the HYROX sense, so it's not necessarily like simulations and sport specific movements necessarily. It's like time domains that are probably similar, or like a flare on certain movements you might see. So rather than like every single week you're doing burpee broad jumps to get better at burpee broad jumps, it's like you have variations. Like it could be just a regular burpee, or it could just be like push-ups, or it could be whatever. Like as long as you were touching point on some things that might
Something
show up
similar to
yeah,
a HYROX race,
not super specific.
Yeah.
So similar movement pattern, not quite as good as doing actual thing if you were looking to be better at the actual thing. Does that make sense?
So we're basically taking like the elements of a HYROX race, and each week we're just randomly kind of sticking them together in some form of format.
Yeah. So we say
that's not necessarily getting harder each week. It's not getting.
Yeah, it doesn't have to necessarily be progressive. It can be progressive, but obviously as soon as you start to make things progressive, there's less flexibility and freedom within the programming. So, I know for us, we chose our first GPP thing with still priorities. It's not like I'm like, here is a random list of things and now I'm just going to flip-flop between whatever I feel like for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Like it's still not that, but it's also not as structured as though we are doing a peak for a race.
Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, when we sat down and said, okay, maybe like there's clearly a lot of demand and people are wanting more HYROX.
Yeah.
How can we do this in a way where we basically run classes and we help people all year round without falling into the thing that we basically believe so strong, not believe against, but it's like, how do we still do this? And it's not just about writing a random workout on a whiteboard and getting people to
like
do
how
it.
do we base it on the values we have as a programming organization?
Exactly.
I understand that. It was something that, we had to have multiple conversations about. And I think it's something we come back to quite often, where there is a part of you that's like, it's easier. It's easier to just run a general program all the time, and make it random. But like you said, is this what's best for the community that comes? Someone who's going to turn up every week, every day that you have programmed, how is this going to benefit them? And I think that you'll find more often than not by doing that, you're probably going to create some pretty severe imbalances. And by the time there is a peaking phase, they're not going to be ready to do a race because they've got imbalances or injuries or they've overtrained a certain muscle or whatever it is. I don't know. But it just leads to that potentially happening. So the way that we've thought about it is, okay, we can't look at Asia on a whole and have every single race on our calendar. Like that just isn't realistic because then we're running a peaking phase throughout the entire year.
Which means we're not peaking.
Yeah, so you're not peaking anymore. It's kind of like, doing the CrossFit Open, but every month. So instead, what we've done is like, okay, let's just look at what is the most feasible and realistic for our immediate community. And we were like, cool, Taiwan, super close, pretty cheap to get to. Hotels aren't bad. Our community is on board with that as well. Sweet. That's an earlier one in the year. Then we'll have a period of time in between that where we're not having to peak. And then we'll peak again for HYROX in actual Hong Kong. So now we've got a race in May, we've got a race in November, and then that gives us a buffer time in between to do the general program. And with those general programs, what we decided to do was, okay, technically speaking, up to each one, we have kind of a 6-week block with a 1-week kind of deload, a 6-week block, and then it's the next 1-week deload, and then it's HYROX peaking. And that's how it would then rotate through in the year. So that was our plan.
And then let's talk about these 6-week cycles. So,
Sure.
So I think you just made a really good point there, which was we didn't just pick 6 weeks. It's not like a magical number that we just plucked out of thin air.
No.
We actually looked at the whole year.
Yeah.
We started by putting in the 2 competitions. We're like, okay, these are the 2 Asian-based competitions going to apply to kind of our immediate community here. Let's put those in first.
Yeah.
And then let's look at like what kind of gaps do we have between those. And it ended up working out kind of perfectly that 6 weeks was like a perfect stop gap between competition prep phases.
Exactly.
So now we have 6 weeks. We've decided we've got 2 6-week cycles. What are we doing in those 6-week cycles?
Yeah. What are we doing? That's a great question. So we have our members on 3 days a week now. So we currently run 3 classes a week. Within the 6-week cycles, like I said, it's not random. So one of the tests or one of the things that we work towards is the PFT, which is essentially the HYROX physical fitness test. Is it a true replication of what someone is capable of for the sport of HYROX? I don't believe so, because the time domain is so different. But at the same time, it's kind of like the Open. It's fun. You get to like create a community event from it. They get
comparable data.
Yeah, comparable data that's online. You get to have like little patches and certificates with your time, and people love that. Like, you forget, as someone who's grown up with sport and been super athletic and done a lot of competitions, people don't do that all their life. So this sort of stuff is special to them. So number one, for the gym, it's great because it creates hype and awareness within our community, but it also invites others to do the same. And that's kind of where we can get more members trickling in, or people developing more awareness of HYROX, which is fun. So one of the blocks was tailored towards that, where, okay, it wasn't the most structured compared to an actual intense peaking block, but it still had the intention of, okay, these are the movements we're going to see. This is the order it's going to be. How can I get them to be better at things like their wall balls? Because they've probably not done that volume of wall balls before. I don't think many people have outside of CrossFit. And then how can we educate? And I was like, cool. Well, people haven't spent that much time probably on rowers, or if they have, they probably haven't learned about, stroke rate or pacing or getting into and out of the rower. So the progressive block for me was education at the beginning and skills in isolated parts. And then the back end of the session did come with like general fitness that tailored it towards being better at the PFT towards the end. And then it's like, cool, they've learned those two things now. Now we can move away from that. In the next week's cycle, let's have a look at something different. Maybe it's now, okay, the ski yoke. They haven't really touched that because the last one we did skiing in the classes, but we didn't focus too much on like the nuances of it. Let's focus on ski. And the next one we're going to focus on is burpees. Now with the burpees, people are like, yeah, but a burpee's a burpee. But is it? So again, it's accumulating the volume of burpees. It's accumulating the awareness of the fact that there's different styles. Are they stepping back, stepping up? Are they jumping back, stepping up? So it's just a whole idea of like, what we want to do is educate. And by educating, you're giving people or equipping them with the tools that they can use to know their style that they should use for certain things. They should know their pacing. They build confidence. They feel like, okay, now that I'm seeing all these big things come up as it gets close to the sport of HYROX, I've already touched on these things and it makes sense. So that was kind of the goal.
So it's within those 6 weeks, there is still a structure element to it.
Yes.
It's not necessarily preparing them for a race in a sense that at the end of the 6 weeks, you as a participant of that 6 week cycle aren't going to be like, okay, I know exactly what my pace is going to be, how I'm going to attack this race. But, there is a process that we're following where we're trying to each week, educate them a little bit more on a certain thing. We're picking specific priorities within the 6 weeks. So we're not saying we're going to try and make you world class at everything, but we're going to pick maybe 3 or 4 things over 6 weeks. We can put a little bit more focus and energy into those things, teaching you how to do it, building awareness around it. Then everything else is kind of like, we're just going to give you some exposure to it. Still going to be fun, still get a sweat on, still get some HYROX-y stuff, but the priority is going to be a little bit more selected and clear.
Yeah, exactly that. And then also within that as well, I forgot to mention that, at the end of the day, resistance and strength training is important. We can't just make someone do conditioning all the time. And I base that on the fact that someone who's coming to our HYROX classes, that's probably all they do, right? So I wanted to ensure that they were still getting like a full body resistance training within the 6, like over each week, if that makes sense. So each session would have a little bit of something, but I didn't make it as progressive as I would when we do something like our Live, Perform, Compete programming. Like the main idea is to hit those movement patterns, but I can create a little bit more variety, whether I was running it on like an A-B template. So when I say that, it's like week 1, maybe they were doing something like dumbbell Romanian deadlifts and strict pressing. Week 2, maybe they're doing something slightly different. And then back on week 3, we go back to what we did on week 1. So it was just allowing people to have variety without knowing that I'm actually also helping them with their structure as well.
I think something we talked about was that at first, the way that we looked at the HYROX stuff was that, okay, people who join our HYROX classes are going to be doing it as a supplement to their other stuff. But then when we thought about that, we're like, well, we didn't know what their other stuff is. Like they could be just doing more HYROX type stuff, in which case we might be doing them a disservice by just giving them more intensity and more volume of the same movements. And then the thing that you said at the start, we're trying to avoid, which is, repetitive strain injuries and burnout and all that stuff, we might actually be contributing to that. So I think we basically decided that we should basically look after all the things that we think are important to allow someone to be good at HYROX, but also to have a nice long healthy career with this should they want to do multiple HYROXs over years.
Mm.
So basically, how can we get them as good as we possibly can without, sacrificing their short or long-term health? And so
Yep.
that's where we started thinking about the strength training element.
Mm.
And I think it's important to note this in the way that you've designed the strength training. We're not just doing lunges. We're not just doing farmers carries. We're
No.
not just doing sled pushing and sled pulling. The things that we
No.
see in a HYROX event, we're actually doing all the stuff that we probably don't see, so we're doing like double leg work, like Romanian deadlifts. Like we don't see a deadlift at any point in a HYROX race unless technically picking up the kettlebells for your farmer's carry is your deadlift.
For that one that you're going to
Exactly.
do.
But, we see it as an important thing because in a HYROX race, we're not training hip flexion very much.
No.
Other than a ski erg and rowing, but that's
Yeah.
very different because it's light load and
Exactly.
it's aerobic. So we know that we need to get that work in there if we want to keep people balanced. Same with, like you said, like if we're doing overhead pressing, you don't have to press anything over your head in a HYROX race, but that's exactly why we do it.
Yeah.
Because we want to expose them to the movements they don't always do. So we're keeping their bodies a little bit more structurally balanced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a time and place for everything, right? So when we're saying this, it's not like we never do single leg strength work, and it's not like we never do squatting, because that does come. But when we're programming, there are essentially different phases that we think about. And this is specifically for probably the peaking phase, should I say, where we're working, let's just say it is our 12-week cycle. We have what's called our accumulation phase. Now in that, you're going to see things like your lunges, things like your burpees, things like your rowing, things like even just any other skill element probably is going to be more so in an isolated setting. So we're practicing the skill of it. We're building our strength for it. We're getting better at it. We're building awareness. And then we have a little bit of like a step back to be like, okay, we've done the building. We're going to take a step back because this cycle's quite long. This next block's going to be our intensification phase. So singularly, you've done all these things. Now let's see what happens if we add a little bit of fatigue to it. Can you still apply what you've learned in this setting and then make this look a little bit more like the sport of HYROX? Once we've done that phase, we go into pre-comp. Now, pre-comp, like that changes entirely again, where it's like, it literally is now the sport of HYROX. We're doing simulations. We're doing things like that. We don't start the simulations from week one. Like imagine doing 12 weeks straight of HYROX simulations. Like you'd be screwed. Yeah. So it's more a case of, okay, we know we need to build them up to that point. They think, and a lot of members think, I need to be doing all of the stuff all the time to be better. But actually, by slowly introducing and implementing things a little bit more and being smart about the things we do around it, by the time they get to that pre-comp, they're like, oh, wait, actually, I know so much more about my aerobic system and how to stay aerobic. I know so much more about what style or what method works best for me. I know so much more about what it means to stay under the red line. Like actually one of the comments we had from someone recently, I was talking to her after the class and I was like, hey, like Sharon, you've been really consistent. Like what makes you come here? Because I know you have a membership at Pure and I know that they have HYROX classes. I'm just really intrigued. Like, why do you come to Coastal? And she was like, no, it's because you guys educate us. Like I've learned so much more in, I guess, this 6-week cycle, 8-week cycle than I ever have being in a gym. And now I thought like going hard and like ending my soul, although like in the moment it feels good, I never could have energy for the rest of my day. And like, I didn't know that I could actually get fitter by going slower. Like it really like blew her mind. So it was really cool to learn that, yeah, they're trusting the process and they're getting better. And it's because of the programming we've decided to do.
Yeah. I want to like dissect that a little bit more because you started talking about the competition prep stuff.
Yes, I did.
So firstly, like typically how long are our competition prep cycles?
We technically have 2 available if we speak about the online programs. I would say 12 weeks is good. That's a good amount to like really prepare someone for it. 8 weeks is the minimum I would recommend. Do I think that 8 weeks is enough to peak someone? If they were doing similar training prior to, maybe. But if it's someone coming into it, it's more like, okay, I have 8 weeks to like prepare for this and feel pretty equipped, but not to like, nail it.
So what we mean by 8 and 12 weeks is basically you take your race date and then you're working 8 to 12 weeks back from that when we start our preparation cycle.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So we've got, let's say we're talking about the 12-week cycle here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a few things there. You said accumulation, intensification, pre-comp. What does that mean and how does that fit within the 12 weeks?
Right. So if you were to reverse engineer what you've just said, if we go all the way to the competition, that is essentially our race week. So what you're probably going to see in the forefront of that week, knowing that the race is generally on a weekend, is that that week is a bit of a taper. Yeah. So that means, okay, I can still move. It doesn't mean doing nothing. And different people like different things, which is why, generally speaking, a taper has a relatively open template where it's like rep prescriptions or distance prescriptions can be quite large, or it could even be like, hey, if you actually just want to get out the gym and do this instead, go for it. Main idea.
Basically, it's some form of reduction in volume and or intensity.
Exactly. So that way, by the time they get to game day, they feel like they have the itch.
Yeah.
Like, I always try and describe what the itch is to people, because they're like, what do you mean by the itch? I'm like, oh, do you know when you've been sick for a couple of days and you like can't make it to the gym, or you had a really long day at work and there's been no time that you could get to the gym, and like all you want to do is go into your session. You've had something come up because your kid had something and now you haven't been able to do the thing you wanted to do. Like that feeling where you're like, I just want to do it. You want that.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, you can use it whenever you like.
I
will. So the weeks prior to that are what we call our pre-comp phase. Now, the pre-comp phase is where we are essentially emulating the sport of HYROX. You wouldn't start this phase with like the full simulation. So if we're still working backwards, the week before is now just like skill touches. This is the weekend before. You're not doing the simulation. You're not really trying to replicate it. It's like you've already done that the week prior to this. Let's just make some skill touches on the things that you think you need to work on and make you feel a little bit more confident with those things. Then we go into the next week back from there, and that is your simulation. Some people, for me personally, I don't like to do 100% simulation because then by the time I get to the race week, I'm kind of scared what it feels like because it hurts. So
what for you personally?
Yeah.
Like, what is as a percentage of 100% is basically doing a full race?
Yeah.
What would be kind of like your rough range of how much of a race would you like to do to know? To give yourself the confidence to know that you're going to be good?
I am pretty happy to sit between probably like 70 to 80%, if at the high end of what
I would agree.
Yeah, at the high end for me. It gives me a pretty good idea of like, okay, by the time I'm getting to this, how am I feeling? What do I need to change? Where would the fatigue level setting in? And then I know on game day, like, okay, I have a pretty good toolbox and a lot of awareness to know when to push and pull back. Anything more than that, for me, doing the 100% simulation, like, because I probably know my pacing quite well and I know that I can push at certain points and I time it right, it hurts when it needs to at that end point. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that again.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already tired right now.
I'm going to leave it to game day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't want to just half-ass a simulation, because then it's not a simulation anymore of what I'm going to try to do on the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to reduce the distance or the time spent or the percentage of the amount done. But that is, again, why on that day we give prescriptions of these are the ranges you can work within. Do what you need to build confidence. If you screw it up, it's okay. It's why you do it. And then you can make your adjustments. You reflect, think about your pacing strategies and what you would change. Boom, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
The week before that is, again, another simulation, but it's smaller. So we start with maybe something like a 60% to 80% is normally what we do on that week. And then the week following would be the 80 to 100.
So I just want to pause you there, Tam. So what we mean by that is basically we're taking, let's say you can take 60% of each functional station.
Yes.
And 60% of each run. So you're still doing it kind of like in the order of the race, but your distances and reps are just less.
Exactly. Yeah. Week prior to that, for us and what we do here, now we're moving into our intensification phase. So the intensification phase, within this, we're going to have, again, things that are looking like the sport, but not the full simulation. So for me, I've broken it up because there is 12 weeks. It's like, okay, that week before, the 60 to 80% that you've just done, the week before that, you're only doing the back end of it. So you're doing stations essentially 5, 6, 7, and 8 with the running and feeling what that feels like under a bit of fatigue. The week prior to that, you're doing 1 to 4. And then the weeks prior to that, you're now kind of in your accumulation phase where you're doing all the things that are leading towards being able to do that by the end. A lot more running volume. That was something, I guess, because we are a CrossFit gym by nature, we do a lot of strength and conditioning stuff, and people do that quite a lot. So we actually had 2 tracks running at the same time. One for our in-house members who do this stuff all the time, where I was like, you guys just need to run. So I wrote them a running program for 4 weeks, while the people who were new members to the gym, and we assumed that they weren't doing this sort of stuff, had more of an accumulation phase of the skills and things that they don't get touches on from not being in our classes.
Yeah.
And that would take us all the way through to the beginning.
So if I was to just kind of reiterate
Please.
what you talked about there, so the pre-comp phase
Yeah.
is basically we're now doing iterations of the HYROX race.
Yes.
So the order of exercises are all there.
Mhm.
We're basically building people up. So a couple of weeks before HYROX, they hit their hardest week,
Yeah.
which is between 70 to 100% of the simulation,
Mhm.
and then we back off and then we crush our race.
Absolutely.
The intensification phase, which comes before that, is basically all about setting them up for success for when the pre-comp phase comes.
Yes.
And the key part there is that, yes, what we could just do for 12 weeks is basically do HYROX races and just go from like 40% to 45% to 50% and basically spread it over 12 weeks. But I think it's something we also have to play with as coaches. It's like, it has to be interesting.
Yes.
12 weeks to keep people engaged and coming back and having fun. It means that's why we deliberately break up these phases, which have very different priorities,
Yeah.
but they're all still kind of connected in a way.
Yeah.
Right. The intensification cycle where we're doing, okay, we're going to do the back half of the race and then we're going to do the front half of the race. It's still, when we're doing it, we're learning about our paces. We're getting a feel for what this is going to feel like.
Yeah.
So that when we do our first like mini simulation, it doesn't feel totally foreign. We're coming into this mini simulation being like, all right, from all the last 6-7 weeks of training, I've got a pretty damn good idea of what run pace I'm going to hold, what row pace I'm going to hold,
Yeah.
how I'm going to break up my burpee, broad jumps, etc.
Yeah.
So it's basically like everything, we're working backwards, like you said, we reverse engineer, and every phase that comes before is all about setting them up for success for the next phase.
Yeah.
Whilst trying to keep it fun,
Yeah.
interesting,
Yep.
different, and
Yep.
some form of like progressive, structured way.
Exactly. And then that's just talking about the race itself. Like, we didn't even dive into the things that have to happen with strength. So let's keep it super.
But I do want to talk about that, because I do want to talk about the strength stuff, because again, just backtracking to when this all started happening for us. I
Yeah.
think it's important for people to realize that we didn't just like come up with all these 100 ideas, these different programs. Like, this has been a pretty slow like evolution of our
Yes.
HYROX programs.
Yeah.
But I think when we first did our first 12-week prep or 9-week prep, however long it was for the people at Coast One Hong Kong, we basically knew that, okay, well, pretty much everyone joining this has done a lot of CrossFit, so they're going to be fine with the functional movements. We probably just need to run and focus on that a little bit more, and then just get them comfortable with a HYROX race.
Yeah.
But then when we started going online and basically putting these programs out to the world, we were like, well, hang on a minute. Not everyone is like our coastal community.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of these people are going to be the complete opposite. Like you said, like, it's not actually even about the skills. It's that they're not actually strong enough to push a sled, or they're not strong enough to throw a ball to a target for a wall ball. So these guys need something totally different to what we've just run for the last 12 weeks. So basically that led to us creating different iterations of our 8 and 12 week cycles, which we have a strength bias program, basically for individuals who might have done enough running but struggle with the functional movements and need more strength. We have obviously the run bias program for those probably like myself that do all right with the functional movements but need more running. And then we have like our balance program. So for those who are decent enough with the strength, they're decent enough with the running, they just need kind of a blend of both. So talk to me about the difference between those three programs.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we definitely had to brainstorm quite a bit, because we were like, yeah, this is how we would do it. And then we're like, wait, no, not everyone does what we do. So we can't make that assumption. So now we need to cater to the most, right? So like you said, we divided it into a couple of categories, and it first started with, okay, let's run a running bias program and a strength bias program. And the way that we did that, if you think about 3 days of training a week, because that's what we based it on, we said, all right, someone who is doing the running bias program needs to have running or at least endurance-based work, at least 2 of the sessions with some strength stuff still. So it's not just a running program. It's still catered towards HYROX. It still wants to make them make touches on the strengths elements needed, but it will prioritize their aerobic system and their running development. Then for the strength, it's the exact same, but in reverse, right? So it's now, okay, over the 3 days, you're going to see more strength on 2 days, and then you're still going to have a running or aerobic piece on one of the days. As it progresses, both of them then tend to lead themselves towards the same Saturday prep where it looks pretty similar, getting them towards the race. We wrote that program with the intention of saying, okay, well, people are pretty invested in HYROX, but a lot of people probably still have their own thing. So this could be done as a standalone program and could make someone pretty good at the sport. It could also be done as an accessory program for someone who already does training. So that was kind of the intention with the 3-day program. So we had the 12-week and the 8-week with them. Actually, they're pretty similar. It's just 4 weeks longer to prep and have more of an accumulation phase and more of an accumulation phase in the 12-week program. Then we were like, okay, HYROX is actually becoming pretty big and there's hunger for it. Like, people want a program, and we know we're pretty good at programming. So like, why don't we put our brains together and we'll create a 5-day program that's balanced. Now, we still actually have people that have the option of making it more running bias or making it strength bias over that balance program. So essentially that program runs over 5 days. The weekend session is always the session that they get an option of either doing the strength session that we had programmed or the running or aerobic system biased one.
So they're basically doing either 3 conditioning based biased and 2 strength, or the opposite, 3 strength, 2 conditioning biased.
Exactly. And then the only other difference with that is that, let's just say you trained Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you rested Thursday, you trained Friday, Saturday. The Monday session and the Thursday session that we've said in your program, you would make that the bias of what you're trying to train. So if you were doing the strength bias program, the strength training goes on the Monday. Yeah. If you were doing the aerobic bias training, you would do the aerobic session on the Monday, the strength on the Tuesday. So it was always biasing someone's weakness. And that's how we get people to choose. It was always
and you were doing that because that's the days they're freshest in the week, because they're
yes,
coming out
absolutely.
Rest day.
Sorry. Yes, I should have described that. So if we think about the weekend, they're training on a Saturday, they're resting on Sunday. Monday means they're more fresh. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, they start to become more fatigued. They rest on the Thursday. Then we have another priority day after that where they have a little bit more energy.
Yeah. So when we teach people about programming, we always call these like our critical days.
Yeah,
right?
critical days.
Critical days are the days where generally we're going to have a bit more energy availability. Yeah. Because in this, because we're not considering anything else like job, work, blah, 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 travel, but they're coming out of a rest day. So technically they should be feeling better. So we put the most important work that person needs on that day after the rest day so they can get more out of the session.
Exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't mean it has to be stuck to those days. Like, you have to also have more of a client-centric approach sometimes, or someone can start the program and do it on different days. But the way we've structured it is just based on the fact that people might train in that way.
Love it.
Yeah.
Tammi?
Yeah.
That was a very you broke that down very beautifully.
Oh, really?
And I think it was really nice to actually think back and remember just how far we've come with this HYROX program.
I agree.
And like, as you were talking about all the like times we sat down and brainstormed, there's been so many iterations of that.
There really has.
Since 2022.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty cool. I feel pretty proud, and I'm very proud of you because, you've been the one orchestrating this whole thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Just like how many times we've come to a crossroad and been like, okay, shit, hang on a minute. Because I actually completely forgot the 5-day-a-week program. Yeah. Because we were like, well, hang on, there are people who want more than 3. How do we make this work for these guys? And then kind of we put our heads together. You come up with a plan, you present it, and it's like, okay, tweak this, tweak that, let's try it. And then, then we just had so many iterations of that. Yeah. Where I think we're probably in a place now where we have like a pretty comprehensive offering for people who want to do it, with us here, but also, if no matter where you are in the world, doing whatever HYROX race that you're prepping for, we can help you. And then there's another option.
Tell me, what is the option?
They can do it by themselves or with a coach.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. The premium side is fun as a coach for me. Obviously, I love that people are doing our program. It's great if they buy it and they do it by themselves. But for me, like I spoke about at the beginning of this podcast, like a huge part of this is connection. And so when people are our online subscribers and become premium athletes, like, I get to watch all of your results and give you feedback and help you with your technique on anything you need help with, or help you think about your pacing and your strategy and your nutrition and your food, like all the stuff that goes into it, mindset, like that's the stuff I love. So I've really enjoyed connecting with the people who have gone premium. And yeah, it's the people that I get to meet in Taiwan now. Like, that's what's getting me amped. Is like, I've been online dating for so long. Like, let's meet in person already.
So tell me a little bit about Taiwan, just to wrap this all up, because this is going to be the first ever event where you as the head programmer, head coach are actually
Yeah.
flying down with a
Yeah.
big group of people representing the process? Like what's going to be your role for that weekend?
So my role is just to be there for them. Like, this is their moment. I've been with them every step of the way, essentially. So it's just be there for moral support, be there to help calm their nerves if they need it, be there to create psych and hype, but also there to fly the flag for the process. Like, all of us are coming together from different walks of life and different backgrounds and different experiences. And it's just a chance to get together, meet each other face to face, share hardship together, go and celebrate together. And that for me sounds pretty sweet.
Pretty damn cool. Well,
Yeah.
Tam, I think you're doing an incredible job.
Thank you.
I know this is also just the beginning. It's really cool that we were able to be a part of this kind of new thing that's creating a lot of traction right now, right from
Yeah.
the very start. And I just know that we're doing it. We're doing it in a way that really aligns with the things that we believe in,
Yeah.
as coaches and programmers. And, you're doing an incredible job at steering the ship. So thank you for
Yeah.
talking us through how we prepared people for HYROX and kind of like our story and vision on it. Last thing, where can people find out more about our HYROX programs?
Sure. So if you go to the processprogramming.com website, it is in our programs there. It is also on the Coastal Fitness page. It is also on my Instagram and the Process's Instagram and probably other Instagrams as
Mine
well.
as well.
Ed's Instagram. So you can find out through that. If you also wanted to get in contact with Coastal or the Process Programming, you can email enter the name of the company, so processprogramming.com or coastalfitness.com, and we'd be happy to help you.
Sam, absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Done.